Meredith. 6 months into the Assembly and it's all going far more smoothly than anyone might have expected. But voices are being raised in and outside Stormont about the need for opposition in government, something that our system of enforced coalition doesn't provide for. So who dreamt up this way of governing division? In the first of two special reports, Julia Paul is on the power-sharing trail in the Netherlands.
I remain unpersuaded that there is a compelling case for bringing forward Irish language legislation.
He's missing an opportunity here, a major opportunity, to prove that he is capable and willing of being the minister for all of the people.
Bickering and backbiting in the Assembly, but this is actually political theory in action.
An Irish Language Act would be both divisive and extremely expensive.
The Minister seems to understand the cost of everything and the value of nothing.
I call the Minister.
We may think we invented power sharing, but this is known as a consociational model of government, and it's been used across the world. The question is, will it really work here? Across Europe, it's a calm morning in the Netherlands. Our future could look like this.
And this is where consociationalism was born. This is Amsterdam, one of the most laid-back cities in the world. There's a real ethos here of live and let live. And yet it's less than 100 years ago that society in the Netherlands was deeply divided along religious lines, much like our own. So what happened to change all that?
Well, basically the 60s happened, and as they got underway, the structure of society began to crumble.
At the start of the 20th century, society here in the Netherlands was strictly divided into three segments, or what was known as three pillars. There were the Catholics, there were the Orthodox Calvinists, and there were those with no religion. And those people lived strictly parallel lives, no connections. The only way they did connect was at the very top of society, through central government.
Mainly, the characteristics of a pillar was a complete society, that is, including political parties, trade unions, churches, of course, and all kinds of civil society organizations. So in Holland, let's say 50 years ago, it was difficult to play football outside your own pillar.
And there wasn't violence between the pillars?
And there was some kind of violence, yes. Especially in the countryside, it was quite common that the boys from the Catholic school would beat up the boys from the Protestant school and vice versa. So there was violence.
What happened in the 60s in the Netherlands to change society?
Well, and actually what happened in the 60s, people lost their faith. And hence the ideological cement of the pillars.
Well, it's unlikely Northern Ireland is going to lose its appetite for religion anytime soon, but it has stomached a similar political system. There are four main ingredients. A consociational government includes parties from all sides. Resources must be allocated in proportion to the communities, in public spending, for example. Communities have some self-government over particularly sensitive issues, like education in Northern Ireland. And finally, there's the provision of a mutual veto. So if one community doesn't agree with a policy, it can be stopped.
It rests on a very pessimistic view of human nature, and it assumes that really every Protestant is a unionist, and just as unionists every other Protestant, and that's all they are. They're not a footballer or a mother or any other thing, and therefore they've got nothing in common with anyone from the other side. And in terms of the political arrangements, you want to have a model of cooperation so that instead of parties being able to veto each other, they're mutually dependent and they come to collaborate, and that working together then encourages people in the wider society to work together and over time you get to be a normal society rather than a divided one.
I suppose that we've all been a bit surprised by the events of the last 6 months or so, that, you've got an executive now that does include very, uncomfortable ideological and national bedfellows. So I suppose consociationalists would say, well, now this demonstrates that in fact it can work. How stable it is a different matter.
And that's the problem, according to critics. They say this political system just freezes the divisions in society in place, and that doesn't bode well for the future.
Well, the concern about Northern Ireland would be over time we get what has been described by Seamus Mallon in the past, the former Deputy First Minister, as Balkanisation. The breakup of the Balkans into various competing nationalistic communities. The risk in Northern Ireland is that consociational arrangements lead to a kind of mental partition, that people just live in completely separate worlds. For example, at election time, we effectively have two elections now. We have a unionist election and a nationalist election.
So in the country where people once lived like that, are they more positive about our chances?
I am, yes. Yes, because just like violence is path dependent, as we say, so is peace. So once you have a relatively long period of peace, then it becomes more and more difficult to go back to violence. Because people have got used to the peace, they see the advantages, and so they will not risk to fall back into a violent system, even though they find the present system not ideal.
Well, the consociational model of government may have helped integrate society in the Netherlands, but that hasn't happened in neighbouring Belgium. I'm off to Brussels now to find out why. Join me next week for the second of these special reports.
Jaunting